Hi, if you don't know me, I'm Aron Cramer, President and CEO of BSR, and I'm delighted to be with you all. This feels a lot like a friends and family gathering, and over the last couple of months, friends and family and also some alcohol have actually been really, really important. And I want to thank the great GreenBiz team for providing all three of those things here this week. I'm not going to talk a lot about the election, actually. I'm going to talk about it a little bit and talk about some other changes and why, let me see how I do with this, why at BSR we're thinking about how we want to redefine sustainable business. And we started thinking about this last year, well before November 8th. Looking ahead, this year is our 25th anniversary year. We're very proud about that. We want to use it, thank you. That's probably one of my BSR colleagues who is applauding. We want to use it as an opportunity to look back a little bit, but mainly to look forward, because as we've heard throughout the 3 days, and as everyone knows, there are just so many things that are changing, and we need to be changing with it. There's a great book that I read. It came out in the second half, I think, of last year, The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly. Kevin was one of the founding editors of Wired magazine, and he's an incredibly astute student and propagator of technology, and he also understands very well the intersection of technology and society. He's got a chapter in his book that's all about the phrase becoming, and his theory is that technology, even though it's inanimate, is in a constant state of becoming, and also that all of our that our societies are similarly going through those kinds of fundamental changes as we learn how to interact with new kinds of technologies. What's interesting is, as I was reading his points about this, he didn't use the word biomimicry once, but I think in essence he was importing from nature attributes that are present everywhere and applying them to technology, and then more broadly to the changes that the slides aren't making, but there we go, that are affecting all of us. And so I think my hope is that the field of sustainable business is also in a state of becoming. I like to talk about the fact that there's a big difference between headlines and history. And, you know, Lord knows we've had more than enough headlines, and if you count tweets, it's exponential. It's sort of a constant stream. I was talking with someone last night saying, yeah, if I'm away from my phone for 3 hours, I don't know if the Republic has ended or what's happened, et cetera. So we're living with all of this stuff. A lot of it's really important, but a lot of it is distraction. You know, it's the old bit about the difference between the signal and the noise. And so we're dealing with a lot of headlines, but in fact, there are some underlying historical changes that are taking place that I think need to inform how we think about sustainable business. So 3 to speak to before we get into how we would like to redefine sustainable business. So there's one that's good, there's one that's neutral, one that's not so good. We now have, let's start with the good one. We now have frameworks that tell us the direction in which we need to head. The Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, a whole host of other frameworks and concepts that really for the first time over the last year and a half have given us a globally agreed sense of purpose, sense of direction. That's fantastic, and we need to build from that. So that's number one. Number two is the one that's more neutral. It's the disruption that's taking place in business. And from our 250 plus member companies, we hear from absolutely every one of them, and I'm sure it's true for all of you, that your business is going through a series of changes that at times feel absolutely existential. What sector am I in? Who are my customers? How do I take advantage of new business models? The future of even the largest, and maybe especially the largest companies, will not look the way they have. So that's number two. Number three, of course, is political volatility, and that's the one that's not so good. So the big question for us, I think, is how will we meet this moment? And the theme of the BSR conference last fall was Be Bold, and that was not just another conference theme. That was our statement of intent about where we think the world is, and that the conference was the week before the election, so if anything, it's even more true today. If we are going to capture this moment, if we are going to meet this moment, we do need to think afresh about what sustainable business is all about. And I would say there's 3 ways we need to do that. The first is a new agenda, second is new approaches, and the third is a new voice. So let's start with the agenda. There are some things that are going to require more attention on our collective agenda. And the first I would offer is a set of words that you probably don't hear in any GRI report, and it's not jargon, but it's basic economic fairness. Basic economic fairness. We continue to live with chronic income inequality. We've got questions about how automation will affect jobs. We have changing demographics and with longer lives that mean that we don't know what sort of retirement system we're going to have. The social safety net is in flux. These are things that go well beyond what an individual business can do, well beyond what the private sector as a whole can do. But they're absolutely fundamental, and business will not regain the trust that it needs, and business will not have the good macroeconomic conditions that we all rely upon if basic economic fairness doesn't become a bigger part of our agenda. So that's one. Technology, you know, we're living in an absolutely wondrous time. Everyone has their stories. One for me that happened on Sunday night was my 14-year-old son came in and in 30 minutes had produced a video that was far better than what I used to work on with a team of 5 people at ABC News when I started my career. We can all think of examples of how all of us have more agency, more access to information, et cetera, et cetera. But we also know that we're on the cusp of changes that are again, very, very disruptive. And, you know, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, back around 2000, people started to say every company is a tech company. Wasn't true then, it is true now, and it's only going to become more true. And so as companies think about their commitments to business and human rights, thinking about how the rights agenda applies when you've got artificial intelligence and personalized medicine and all sorts of opportunities that raise a lot of questions, that's crucially important. Ethics, talking about ethics in technology, and there's a group of companies now that have gotten together to talk about the ethics of artificial intelligence, and that's really important. Remember, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the basis for the guiding principles on business and human rights, that was written in 1948. Nobody had a television in 1948. So we're dealing with a fundamentally different set of circumstances, and if we don't make good social use, wise social use of technology, the opportunities to apply that and to commercialize that, it won't last. So that's number 2. Number 3 is climate, and here's a lot of good news. The fact is that, as I think everyone knows, the trajectory on renewables is really strong. Prices are tumbling, uptake is increasing, and we can see a pathway towards progress, if not sufficient, really, really significant towards the vision in the Paris Agreement. That's great. The time now, though, is to build a more holistic climate agenda, thinking more about resilience, resilient supply chains, but also human resilience, and thinking about the impact of climate on women. You know, every company now has an approach to climate, and a lot of companies have principles around women's empowerment or gender equity. Very few companies think about how those two things intersect. And we know from what's happening in the world that those intersections are very powerful, and business has an opportunity to mitigate the risks, to create more resilience, and also build stronger economies. So a more holistic climate agenda is also really important. So let me talk a bit now about the second piece, new approaches. And I'd say it's time to disrupt sustainability management the same way business in general is being disrupted. You know, a lot of companies have great 2025 sustainability goals. We heard Mahmood Khan from PepsiCo yesterday, one example. I think they've done some great work on their goals. Very few companies, very few people are thinking about how the role of the Chief Sustainability Officer is going to change over that period of time. And I think to do that, you've got to come back to some core competencies that I think everyone in this audience has, and these are things that are going to be of growing importance over the next several years. So what are those things? Well, At their best, CSOs are futurists, they're connectors, they're innovators, revenue generators. We heard Michael Kabori talk about that from Levi's yesterday. And yes, also advocates, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So how are those competencies going to play out over the next several years? Also come back to technology because they're new tools. And we can use connected devices, the Internet of Things, to get real-time information about conditions in supply chains. That's beginning to happen. It will go much larger. And we can understand through a continuous flow of information what air quality is like, what energy use is like, and also what labor conditions are like. That's very powerful. Big data will remake stakeholder engagement, so we won't be talking to the same 24 organizations over and over again, but actually understand what the long tail of stakeholders, of communities are thinking about what's most important and how business can make a difference. So we've got to use those new tools. The other thing that can evolve is becoming market makers. That's an approach that is happening, but can go further. We're really proud of the Renewable Energy Buyers Alliance that we're participating in with RMI and WWF and WRI, and partnering with GreenBiz for the next REBA Summit in California at Verge in September. Hope to see you there. And we've got 80 companies that have committed to purchasing 60 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2025. That's big. That's a big commitment, and that's good in itself. It also demonstrates how new markets are made. Demand stimulates supply, and you get a virtuous circle. So those are some new approaches. New voice. So the third leg of the stool. In 2016, we had a pretty much of a roller coaster ride in the United States, and also in England and many other parts of the world. And looking back, though, one of the things that was most inspiring was to see how the business community responded to the bathroom law in North Carolina. The notion that a lot of CEOs, including companies headquartered in the reddest of red states, would speak up on behalf of transgender people, I could not have imagined that 5 years ago. And I think the business community found its voice and understood that standing up for principle is important. It's important for its own sake, but it's also important because employees are paying attention. And we saw the 2,000 Google employees who walked off the job to protest the immigration order. It's important in terms of customers. We saw how Uber got punished and Lyft got a lot of benefit, commercial benefit, in the aftermath of some things that Uber did at the time the immigration order was put into effect. But then there's policymakers, and policymakers need to hear from business the vision of the future economy that we're talking about here. That's not heard, understood, defended, or advocated for in Washington enough. And business uniquely can do that. I'm going to pull up someone, we've talked a lot about the future. Let me pull up a fictional American leader from the past. So Jimmy Stewart, I don't know how many of you know the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, but it's sort of an iconic story of a somewhat naive and very idealistic Senate candidate who ends up in the Senate and stands on principle and teaches the entire Senate a lesson. To quote Mitch McConnell, I would say, Mr. Smith, he persisted, just like Elizabeth Warren did. So I'd love to see more CEOs standing as Mr. Smith or Ms. Smith and reminding Washington why principle matters, why actions matter, why a 21st century economy, a clean economy that works for everyone, that's in business's interest, that's in America's interest, and that creates the kind of innovation we need. Let me close with a little bit about the election, just to say that our team at BSR has been pretty upset, and we are not uniform in our political views, by the way, but pretty upset. What I'd like to say to the team, I want to say to everyone here, which is that there are a lot of people who are upset about the direction of politics in America right now. And at BSR and everyone in this room, we have something that a lot of people don't have. We have the opportunity to get up in the morning every day and do something about it. And that is a great opportunity, and without being overly dramatic, I'd say it's a sacred trust. It's an opportunity that most people don't have, so we need to make the most of it. Let me just close with an image that I saw in the Women's March, and I was lucky enough to participate in the march in Paris. It was a bright, cold, sunny day, several thousand people, about half American, half French, and this great spirit, great wit, great commitment. It was all wonderful. And I hope it's okay to cite a young male person, a little boy, as the most inspiring person I saw at this march, at the Women's March in Paris. There was a 7-year-old there, I think he was about 7, who must be a future consultant because he was walking around with this flip chart. He was walking with a flip chart. Have you ever seen that before? I've never seen that before. And I think he was really eloquent, heart plus intellect. If we apply those two things, the sky's the limit. We will, as Joel says, we will make this moment our moment. And so let's go out, let's do that, let's redefine what sustainable business is all about. Let's meet this moment and make the difference I know we can all make. Thank you.
Thank you, Aron.